Fiance faked being rich just to get me to marry him. Should I leave him? My fiance has lied to me literally over hundreds of times. It all started when he and I met 3 years ago. I was turning 32 and going through a divorce, so I had no intention of ever getting into another relationship. At least not for a long time. Come from a really wealthy family, so I inherited a lot of money when I turned 18. That never stopped me from getting a job. I started working in fashion and it was amazing. Eventually I became a stylist and had my own business. My relationship with my then husband was not going well, so we decided to get a divorce. But my ex-husband and I never really had hard feelings and we stayed friends. At the time I was living in New York and had tons of friends. Every single weekend I was going out. And since I was single, I literally had nobody to answer to. My friends and I would go to exclusive clubs and restaurants every single night. This is how I met my compulsive liar of a fiance. He was friends with somebody in my friend group. Now everyone in my group was pretty wealthy. We all drove expensive cars, owned our own businesses, and we worked really hard. One of my friends introduced me to him, and within the first 5 minutes of our conversation, he told me that he was a Calvin Klein model. Of course I believed it because he was really attractive. And he basically asked me how much money I made a year. And I was honest with him. I earned around 300 grand a year. That's when he told me that he was a millionaire. Follow for part 2. Fiance faked being rich just so that I could marry him. Should I leave him? The very first night I met him, he told me that he was a millionaire and that he was a Calvin Klein model. Of course I believed him because he was just that attractive. Then he asked me how much I earned per year, and I told him the truth, $300,000. Look on his face was of utter shock. He told me he almost couldn't believe that I would make that much money. And he started talking about how he's a millionaire and he models and he travels around the world. I was actually impressed. Later that night, I asked the friend that introduced me to him if it was all true. She said, yeah, he posts about it on his Instagram, so I think so. Went to the bathroom and started looking him up on Instagram. And it looked like it was true. He did model for Calvin Klein and was modeling around the world. But honestly, from his Instagram, I really couldn't gather if he was a millionaire or not. It's not like he was posting pictures of him in a Maybach or anything. That very same night, he asked me if he could come to my apartment and I said no. The very next day, he asked me out on a date and I said yes. Ended up going to a really fancy restaurant and he paid for the bill. When the bill came, it was over $1,000. Ordered so many things off the menu. What I really didn't like was that he barely touched any of the food. The rest of the week, he invited me to all these different restaurants. On our second week, I asked him if he wanted to come to my place to have dinner, which he did. And the look of his face when he showed up to my apartment was like shocked. Finally, he asked me how much my rent was. That's when I told him I didn't pay rent. I owned the apartment. That's when he said, yeah, I own my own place too. And then I asked him, why haven't you invited me to your apartment? He said that he was getting renovations done. Exactly a month into us dating, he asked me to be his girlfriend and I said yes. Oh, I had not been to his apartment at this point. He had been paying for everything. Follow for part 3. Fiance faked being rich to get me to marry him. Should I leave him? At this point, he had been paying for everything. Every single time we went to dinner, any date we ever went on, he paid for everything. About 2 months into our relationship, I asked him again if I could go to his apartment. That's when he made up another excuse. He told me the contractor that was doing all the renovations in his apartment basically bailed on him. So his apartment was basically in shambles. I told him that I actually knew a contractor who could help him out. And he told me not to worry about it, that he had it covered. The very next week, he had prepared an elaborate proposal. He took me to Central Park where he had a band. He gave me a 3-carat pink diamond ring. Of course, I said yes. I was so happy. Never thought I'd find love again. After the engagement, I told him that we should just move in together. That's when he said, perfect, I can move into your place next week. I was like, what? He said that he actually wanted to sell his apartment. So I said yes. And the very next week, he moved into my place. When he showed up to my apartment, he literally only had 2 suitcases. And most of the clothes were kind of old and raggedy. I asked him where all of his stuff was, and he said, this is it. That's when I started getting really suspicious. I called his modeling agency, and they told me that they hadn't worked with him in 3 years. So apparently, he wasn't really a model. Confronted him and asked him what was going on. He confessed that he hadn't modeled in years. That when he met me, he was so impressed that he needed to tell me something to impress me. He told me he had a lot of credit card debt and that he actually couldn't afford the lifestyle he was showing me. Then he also told me that he never even had an apartment. He was sleeping on his friend's couch. I told him I couldn't marry him or trust him, and that he was probably only after my money. He swears that he loves me. No, he hasn't asked me for money and he's offering to actually pay for rent. My friends and family think I should leave him, but I love him and I'm so attracted to him. What should I do?
Storytime about how my husband died and his best friend won't leave me alone. Disclaimers is not my storytime, send me on Instagram. My husband and I were married for almost a decade. During that time, we had 2 kids. And of course, his passing was completely devastating to our families. And 2 weeks after my husband died, I was still grieving. But his best friend started coming around our house a lot. First, he was very emotional. Him and my husband were best friends for about 7 years. And they saw each other almost every day. Not only did they work together, but they also would go to the gym together and pretty much hang out all the time. So I know this guy really, really well. When my husband would invite him over, I never got the feeling that he liked me. I mean, sure, sometimes I caught him staring at me, but I'm beautiful, so I understand. So after my husband passed, he started coming over as in, I want to take care of you, and we would just kind of cry together. Don't leave me alone. Disclaimers is not my story time, send me on Instagram. As soon as I opened the door, he asked me if he could kiss me, and I didn't say anything. And he grabbed me and just started kissing me. Of course, I pushed him away and told him that he needed to leave. That's when he said, but you didn't say no. I told him I didn't say anything because I was shocked he would even ask me that. That's when he walked into the house without me inviting him, went straight to the fridge and opened up a beer. Then he starts yelling at me for giving him mixed signals. He says that since my husband died, all I've been doing is flirting with him since when is grieving flirting? I told him that he was completely wrong and that he needed to leave again. Then he said, no, I'm not leaving here until you tell me the truth. That I was secretly in love with him and that I actually wanted to be with him. No, this wasn't funny to me at all. He was slurring his words and barely could stand up. I knew my kids were upstairs, so all I wanted to do was get him out of the house. That's when I grabbed my phone and started texting one of my other husband's best friends. I texted him 911, please come to our house now. He responded right away saying, I'm coming over. After another minute of this guy ranting at me, I told him I was sorry for giving him mixed signals and that was never my intention, blah, blah, blah. Then he asked me out on a date. He said that he wanted to take me out and show me a good time. I said no, and I asked him to leave again, but he wouldn't. Finally, someone knocks on the door. Part 3 is Storytime about how my dead husband's best friend won't leave me alone. Disclaimers on my Storytime and send me on Instagram. That's when he asked me out on a date and started walking closer to me. Finally, someone knocked on the door, and it was my other husband's friend who I texted to come help me. I ran over to the door quickly and I opened it. That's when my husband's best friend, who was drunk in my house asking me out on a date, forcing me to kiss him, tells the other guy that he needs to leave. So I asked the other friend if he could just take this guy home. He said, yeah, of course. And he told him, you're drunk, I'm gonna take you home now. They left together without incident and I was really relieved. But after that, I knew to watch my back now. So here's what happened. He started texting me every now and then asking me if I wanted to go to dinner, and I would not even respond to him. And after that, he started showing up to different places I was at. For example, I go to Pilates classes 5 times a week. This place is near my house, and one day he just showed up trying to take a class. As soon as I saw him, I told the instructor and they kicked him out. That's when he came back and said that he did nothing wrong and that he deserved to be in the class too. He even paid the year up front, so they had no choice but to let him in. Instead, I left. Then he followed me outside to the parking lot and told me that I needed to relax. Said it's not like I'm following you, which he clearly was. I got in my car and left. That very same night, he sent me a message apologizing for acting crazy. Then he told me that all he wanted was just to be close to me and the kids. By the way, my kids really do love him. They ask about him all the time since he stopped coming over, and I don't even know what to tell them. After a few weeks of him not acting crazy, he asked me if he could come over and I said yes. Decided to invite all my husband's friends and we had a nice dinner. But again, this guy asked me out. I said no, but my best friend thinks I should give him a shot. He's good looking and rich. What do you guys think?
Am I wrong for telling a friend the real reason why a coworker wants to date him? I, 24 female, have a friend from work, 26 male, Ben. Over the years, coworkers told me that Ben was interested in me, but I brushed it off. When I met Ben, I had a boyfriend who is now my husband. Ben met him and was even invited to our wedding, so the thought of him liking me was ridiculous. I ended up confronting him about it, and he said that he did like me at first, but stopped once he realized I was taken. My husband knows this and is totally fine with it. I never saw Ben as anything more than a friend. 2 months ago, I caught a coworker, Kat, 23 female, crying in the parking lot after work. I asked what was wrong, and she told me that her boyfriend broke up with her and left the country after they found out she was pregnant, and she insisted on keeping the baby. Kate is white with blue eyes and blonde hair, and so is her ex. Most people in my country are tan and have brown eyes with black hair. This info was important later on. After the breakup, Kate went out on dates every day. The guys had one thing in common: blue eyes, blonde hair. I joked that she must have a type, but she told me that she was looking for someone to father her baby, so they had to look similar to her ex so the baby could pass as theirs. This horrified me, but it wasn't my place to tell her anything. A month ago, Ben and I had lunch where he told me he started dating Kat. Ben is the only guy in our office with blonde hair and blue eyes. I told him dating Kat might not be the best idea. After lunch, I went up to Kate and told her what she was doing is wrong and asked her not to do this to my friend. She laughed it off and said it's okay, he won't find out. I stayed quiet for a while, but eventually told Ben he should seriously stop dating Kate. He said he figured I'll try to break them up because I'm jealous. Man, I was disgusted before finally saying to not come crying to me when he realizes Kate is only dating him so another man's baby could have a father. I stopped talking to Ben shortly after, and everything was relatively peaceful in the office. That was until Kate announced she's pregnant. I could see the color drain from Ben's face as he looked in my direction. A huge fight broke out between the two of them after Ben demanded a paternity test while Kate tried to convince him it wasn't necessary. Kate called me later screaming that I ruined her life, so my guess is they broke up. The thing is, they really do deserve each other, so I'm starting to wonder whether I made the right decision by telling Ben the truth. If I hadn't, they probably would have gotten married and the baby would have had a loving father to look after him. Me personally, I would want to know. So I'd be thankful for someone like you if people knew and didn't tell me. If you're my friend, you would tell me so. Am I wrong for wanting to be a part of my best friend's birth? I, 24 female, was asked by my best friend, 25 female, if I would be in the delivery room with her when she gives birth. I was surprised when she asked me, but I was excited because that's a really beautiful and personal experience that not many people besides a spouse, partner, or close family get to be a part of. But we have always been friends since elementary school, and I've always viewed her like a sister and thought it was amazing that she viewed me like family as well, and I accepted. My best friend's husband, 26 male, got really mad when he found out I was asked to be in the delivery room. He and I have never really gotten along, and he rarely says a word to me when we're all hanging out. We don't argue or openly dislike each other though, and I just figured he wasn't a very sociable person. My best friend still wanted me to be there despite her husband not being okay with it, because it's her decision, it's not his. She's pushing out the baby, not him, so whoever gets to be in the delivery room is her choice. At first, I just thought he wanted it to be a private moment for him and his wife, and I was prepared to tell her that I would not intrude and I would just come visit her after the baby had came and they had settled in a bit. However, it was revealed to me that her husband actually didn't want me to watch her give birth because I am attracted to and have dated women. I was a little confused because I didn't see how that had anything to do with the situation. The story comes out that the reason he never speaks to me or acknowledges my presence is because he doesn't want his wife to be friends with a woman who likes women. He doesn't want me watching her give birth because that means I'll be looking at her naked and it might make me attracted to her or want to hook up with her. Gosh. He said that I had probably had a crush on his wife for years and I was just waiting for the right opportunity to get with her, and he forbid me from being in the room with them. I informed him that unless my best friend personally told me that she no longer wanted me in the delivery room, I was going to be there. Some friends have told me I am just being petty and could cause unnecessary problems in the relationship. I think that it is my best friend's decision who gets to be in there for her. So am I the asshole? No, you're right. It is her decision who gets to be in the room. This dude sounds like a piece of shit. Am I wrong for threatening to cut my parents off financially to stop my brother from proposing at my wedding? I, 27 male. I'll start this off by saying my wedding is scheduled for April because my fiance, 25 female, has always dreamed of a spring wedding. And I really like the idea too. I have an older brother though, 30 male, and last Saturday I was called over to my parents' house to talk about something, but they refused to tell me what it was until I got there. They even sat me down with my brother and told me that my brother wants to use my wedding as a perfect day for him to propose to his girlfriend. I hate stuff like that. I get so anxious. I'm like, just tell me now so I don't shit my pants. I was instantly mad and told them absolutely not, but they ganged up on me. I ended up so enraged to the point that I, one man, somehow backed all three of them into a corner. I told them that if they want to do this, they'll not only be uninvited, but I'll also cut off the financial support I've been giving monthly since they paid to have my golden child brother go through college by taking out a second mortgage. I landed a decently high-paying job and have been sending $500 to my parents monthly to help ease their mortgage. And I didn't ask for a stake in the ownership of their house either. It was entirely goodwill and I can cut it off anytime. I left without speaking anything more to them, but my brother came to my home the next day to yell at me, saying that I ruined his big chance because now our parents are siding with me and say they'll evict him if he tries to propose at my wedding. He said I was financially blackmailing our parents and that he just wanted a good chance to propose because he was afraid his girlfriend might leave him soon. It's like putting a band-aid on a gashing wound. Like, that's not, the solution is not marriage. And if he tries to propose at my wedding, I will have him thrown out. That's not a maybe, but a definite. I said that was his problem, not mine, because my wedding day is not about him, and I doubt his girlfriend would appreciate her proposal followed up and being tossed out by a bouncer. Honestly, people, I don't think any girl really likes getting proposed to at weddings. Like, I don't know why guys think of this idea. It's so lazy. He yelled a few choice words at me, then went crying to our only surviving grandparent, our maternal grandmother, and she called to try and read me over the phone. No surprise, my brother heavily embellished the version of the story he told her, but she still sided with him after I gave her the real story. She tried to hold her ground, but the verbal backlash I ended up giving her left her crying. Dude, it's like, I'm sorry, you made your grandma cry. That got back to my parents, who are now pissed at me for taking things this far. No, you didn't, your brother did. But I told them that I only went that far because I had to when they were all trying to get me to let my brother use my wedding as a springboard for a proposal. They ended up agreeing with me, but still stated they feel like I'm crass. And my brother showed up at my home again to scream at me that I'm an asshole, and I hope I'm happy with myself for not allowing him the opportunity. I thought I was entirely in the right at first, but maybe I really did take it too far with my brother. So am I the asshole for everything I did and said to my brother and everyone else?
My boyfriend's friends call me fat and ugly, and my boyfriend doesn't defend me. Disclaimers is not my Storytime. I sent me on Instagram. My boyfriend and I have been dating for 3 months. We're both in our early 20s, and his friends are a tiny bit older. Some of these guys are already married, but they always try to convince my boyfriend to not get married. And here's how things started. A few weeks ago, we all had a pool party. They all brought their wives and girlfriends, and all of these women have had plastic surgery. I'm talking BBLs, lip filler, everything. Me, on the other hand, I'm completely natural. I'm on the skinny side, so I don't have a lot of fat in my body. That means I don't have a lot of curves. But my boyfriend has told me time and time again that he loves my body. We're both really attracted to each other, and I've never in my life been told that I'm ugly or fat. Not sure how it came up. During the pool party, the men started rating all the girls at the party. They were trying to do it behind our backs, but I happened to hear the conversation. No, my boyfriend didn't say anything. He kind of just stayed quiet. Guess who they started with first? Me. They said I was a hard 4, that I didn't have a womanly body, and that my face was too angular. And one of them straight up said she's kind of ugly. They all started to laugh, and they rated the rest of the girls there. Everyone else was pretty much a 9 and a 10. But the entire time, my boyfriend stayed quiet. It's obviously really upset me. Went to the bathroom and just cried for the rest of the night. My boyfriend came looking for me Boyfriend's friends call me fat and ugly and he doesn't defend me. Disclaimers in my story time and send me an Instagram. I basically spent the entire night in the bathroom crying. Boyfriend came over and knocked on the door. He instantly started apologizing to me. He knew that I had heard the entire conversation and told me that he was sorry. I asked him why he didn't defend me and he said that he didn't want to go against his friends, that they were his only group of friends and that he didn't want to get on their bad side. I told him next time he needed to defend me, that if he didn't do it then I would. And he said please don't get into a fight with them, they're really cool guys. I ended up leaving the party and I didn't say bye to anybody. A few weeks later I had to hang out with them again, but this time they started talking about the way that I was dressed. One of them said that the dress I was wearing made me look really pudgy. And again, they would all laugh. And yeah, they said all of this in front of me. I looked at my boyfriend and said, are you not going to defend me? And they all started laughing at my boyfriend. By the way, if I haven't mentioned this, they all went to the same sorority, so I think they still have that sorority mentality. One of the wives that was there thankfully stepped in and told them that they were all assholes and that they needed to leave me alone because I looked good. A few hours later, somebody was talking about kissing, and one of them asked my boyfriend what it was like to kiss me because I had 0 lips. I instantly stormed out of the party. My boyfriend followed me. Part 3. My boyfriend's friends call me ugly and fat and he doesn't defend me. Disclaimers in my story time and send me an Instagram. They told him it must have been awful kissing me because I had 0 lips. Instantly ran out of the house and went to my car. I was so humiliated and once again my boyfriend did not defend me. He followed me to my car and I asked him if he loved me or not. That he did love me. That his friends and him just had a different way of talking about girls. I told him that hurting my feelings was not a different way of talking. A few hours after I got home, one of the wives started texting me. She told me that his friends spent the whole night bad-mouthing me. And that essentially they were trying to convince my boyfriend to break up with me. They kept telling him that he could do better than me. That I had no ass and no boobs. That I was simply just not pretty enough. Finally, my boyfriend did tell him that he thought I was beautiful and that he liked me. That's when they all told him that he needed to get glasses. Here's the best part. A few hours after they all started getting even drunker, told me that one of the friends started saying that he would want to F me and that it looked like I was probably good in the sack. What? So they want me, but they don't want me? That's when she told me her theory. Said that they probably found me somewhat attractive and that they didn't want my boyfriend to be with me because they wanted me. I feel like that's a little bit far-fetched. It's kind of like the thing in school they tell you. If a boy bothers you, it means that he likes you. Maybe it's true. Either way, I told my boyfriend that I would never hang out with his friends again. But I am thinking of breaking up with him. Can't believe that he wouldn't defend me, not even a little bit. And when he did, I wasn't even present. Also, the way they talk about women is just disgusting. I do love him though. What should I do?
Am I wrong for not attending my sister's wedding because my husband is not invited? Let me start by saying this. I do understand my husband's behavior is inappropriate, but like all of us, he's not perfect, and I took vows with him to stand by him and accept him as a whole person, including his flaws. Overall, he's a good husband and I love him despite this one issue. One issue could be something very big too. So, my husband has a kink for urinating on himself in public. What the fudge? Ew! I think it's the humiliation aspect that gets him all. So sometimes, not every time we get together with my family, he will pee his pants. But overall, it's not really that disruptive. He just stands up and says something like, oh no, I peed myself. Then he goes to the bathroom and changes. I always bring a change of pants and underwear for him in case this happens. And when he gets back, we just move on and don't talk about it. Of course, we don't want people to know my husband is doing this for a kink. So we've told my family he has a medical condition that causes him to not have full control of his bladder. I told him that the reason he doesn't wear adult diapers is that he's ashamed of needing diapers at his age. So he's basically in denial that he needs them and refuses to wear them. Well, now my sister is getting married and she says my husband can't come because she doesn't want him disrupting my wedding by peeing his pants. I told her it was unfair to exclude him over a medical condition he can't help, which is true as far as she knows, but she said it's his own choice to refuse to wear adult diapers, so it is his fault. I told her it's her wedding and she can invite who she wants, but if my husband isn't invited, I'm not coming. He loves my family and I know it really hurts him to be excluded from the wedding just because of a kink he can't help having. He's been crying and saying he feels disgusting for having this kink, but that he can't control himself and now my family doesn't want him around. I know it would really hurt him if I just left him home and went to the wedding by myself. He told me it's my choice to go if I want and that he won't be mad, but I know he'd be really sad if I went. I love my sister and family, but my husband is my life partner, so he's always my number one priority above anyone else. And I believe I should stand by him and support him rather than choosing my family over him. So I told my sister I won't make it to the wedding, and now she's extremely angry with me, saying I'm a bad sister because I won't be there to support her. She's marrying a woman, so she also said it makes me look like I'm homophobic if I don't show up to support their union. I told her I'd love to come if my husband is invited, but she said she can't stand the thought of him disrupting the ceremony or reception by peeing his pants and announcing it. I told her how much it hurts my husband that he's excluded, but she doesn't care. I do feel bad that it hurts her that I won't be there, but he's my husband. Am I wrong for making a joke about my brother's affair at his wedding? When I was in elementary school, I was the type of kid who got disrupted class often on the report card, so I never focused much on school. My district had this system where they would pair high school students with younger kids to help them with their school, etc. And my mom made me do that after I kept getting in trouble. So my tutor was a freshman, Abby, so she would come to our house after school to help me with my homework or something. My brother John was the same age as Abby, so they would talk to each other and ended up dating. She stopped tutoring me officially after like a month, but since she was at our house a lot, I also talked to Abby a lot and we were close. Fast forward 10 years. Abby and John got married and had a kid together. 5 years later, John tells me that he's getting a divorce because he's met someone new. It sucked because I like John and Abby together a lot, but whatever. Then he tells me he had an affair with his new girlfriend. Also sucks, but I told him he shouldn't have hurt Abby like that, but whatever. I also asked Abby how she was doing, and she wasn't doing well, but she told me she didn't want her to be the reason I have a bad relationship with my brother. However, 2 months before my wedding, Abby calls me and tells me that my brother's girlfriend has been harassing her nonstop. She showed me the text, and his girlfriend has been saying some pretty disturbing things about how she's so much better than Abby, taunting Abby for having to share custody of her kid now, just making fun of her and bullying her. I told my brother about this, and he said he would ask his girlfriend about it. A month later, I asked him if he ever brought it up, and he said he did, but saw nothing wrong with the text, which pissed me off. I later confirmed that he saw the same text I saw. Abby apologized for involving me in the whole thing in the first place and encouraged me to still go to the wedding, where my brother asked me to make a speech. The speech went well until I made a joke. The gist of the joke was me turning to his new wife and telling her that if she's learned anything from this, she should know that my brother will never let his wife stop him from finding the love of his life. I like that. That's a really good joke. Yo, high five. I love it. This got my brother and his wife really mad, and they kicked me out shortly after. And my brother has been calling and texting me nonstop, yelling at me. So, am I the asshole here? I think, honestly, this is like one of the only acceptable asshole posts I've ever read. Like, asshole. Like, this is the only time it's okay to be an asshole.
Storytime of my traumatic BBL surgery and why I believe no one should get them. So, around the time I was 18, I just graduated high school. I've always been very insecure about my body. I used to get teased because of it. My legs were like pencil thin and my stomach was like a balloon. I tried working out and building glutes, but they would never grow and my stubborn stomach fat wouldn't move. So for the rest of the year, I saved up and started searching for the cheapest doctors because I couldn't afford to get a BBL. So I came across this one website and the doctor was in Turkey. He did BBLs for as little as $3,000. So I asked my friend if she could come and I scheduled an appointment a few months later. Went through a consultation and all that. As the time get closer, I started to do my research and there's not many reviews, which should have been a red flag. When the time comes, we fly out, go to the office. The building said university and it almost looked like a school. I asked the receptionist about it and she said it was for doctors in training, which was an even bigger red flag, which I'll get into in part 2. Part 2 of my traumatic BBL surgery and why I believe no one should get them. I arrived, got prepped for surgery. They started marking me up so I know where the fat was being transferred. While they're doing this, there's students coming in watching, which, by the way, they never informed me of. And at the time, I thought, well, that's what's supposed to happen, and I never said anything. A couple minutes later, I go through with the surgery. After coming out is when I started regretting it. In the beginning, my body was exactly what I wanted it to be with the faja. But without it, my stomach looked wrinkly and my butt had dimples. I was scared, so I called to see what was wrong. They said after surgery, I was supposed to hire a person to do lymphatic massages on me. They never talked to me about it, but they said they put it inside of my discharge papers. I couldn't find one, so they recommended me to a person that did them for cheap. Reason being because she was a student and they never told me that. The massage was painful, which I expected. I got 5 massages before I left. When I got to the airport with my friend, as soon as I walked on the plane, I passed out, and I'll get part 3 of my traumatic BBL surgery and why I believe no one else should get them. After passing out at the airport, me and my friend were held back to wait 12 hours for the next flight. Luckily, we didn't have to pay, but we had to make multiple stops and sit next to strangers. I was in extreme pain even after taking the medication. When I got back home, I noticed my stomach was still wrinkly and my butt was pointy. I called my surgeon about it and he said it was because I wasn't getting enough massages. So I scheduled for multiple massages, more than what I really needed. The massages turned out to be more expensive than the actual BBL. After 3 months, my body still looked disformed. I cried about it and I constantly would call the surgeons just about every week. And I believe they got annoyed because they stopped answering all my calls. And I started to reach out to them through blocked numbers. After doing more research, I found that my doctor was still a student. No one was fully certified. In the time frame I got my surgery, the facility was getting sued for someone else who got a botched surgery. If you ever get a BBL, please do your research. Am I the asshole for stealing $10,000 from my best friend? So back in 2020, when the pandemic started, my best friend had got laid off from her job. Me, I kind of already worked from home, so as far as working, I never got laid off. Since she was out of work, she was trying to find new ways of making income, and one of them was starting a business. She wanted to start a nail business, which, by the way, this girl could not do nails. And this is no way to bash my friend. She just didn't have the patience to even do her own nails. It took her maybe like 3 months to develop her business, but once she had got it running, she started making a lot of money. And I was happy for her, but I was confused on how she was making money because I've never seen her, do anyone's nails. She said in order for me to understand her business, she's not going to give the ins and out unless I were to join her. And I was like, cool, I guess we both can make money, which I'll explain in part 2. Part 2 of me stealing $10,000 from my best friend. So I joined her business. Mind you, I didn't know exactly what it was about. I just knew it had something to do with nails, and she made little small posts of like nails. When I went to her house and saw her bedroom, she had a lot of press-on nails all over the place. So I was like, oh, she's selling press-on nails. That explains. She told me where she had got everything from, how she markets herself, just explains everything to me. And I was like, oh, wow, this is really great of what you done. I had asked her, like, how do I get started on? She was like, this business that she has started is a 6-figure business monthly, and that I would need to invest $10,000 into her business. And I was like, whoa, because $10,000 is like what I've like had saved up. But she had promised that she was making that amount of money, and she showed me her accounts. She literally said, girl, you can have $100K in your bank by next month. So of course I joined on, and I explained how she tricked me in part 3. Part 3 on how I stole $10,000 from my best friend. So after a month within joining, she said I would have to pay for some of the stock, which was okay, the marketing, the websites, and I also had to help her run, the pages for her business. Well, our business now. I remember when I first had joined on, she was saying like the business is going to be slow for just a few weeks. And, I trusted her because that was my girl. And every month I just was still investing into her ads, still investing into promotion. On top of the $10,000, I was still investing more and more money. Give or take, literally after 6 months, we weren't gaining barely any sales. And she said that she wanted me out of the business because she felt like I wasn't doing much. Mind you, I invested majority of the money. During the process of her wanting to kick me off, I begged her to keep me to stay. Black Friday and Christmas came up, and we started to get a whole bunch of sales, and we made a give or take over $30,000. Knowing that she wanted me to leave, I transferred the money from our business account to my account. Storytime on how my homophobic boyfriend turned out to be actually gay. So my sophomore year of college is actually when I met my boyfriend, which, by the way, we're calling Justin. Justin had just transferred over, and he was a junior. And before anyone comes at me for me being with a homophobic, well, at the time, I didn't know he was, and I didn't exactly know what homophobic was. But anyway, back to our relationship, I met him at a Greek party. We talked, swapped numbers, and then the rest was history. Well, history for the next couple months. I would notice little small things in our relationship, like he never liked any of the guy friends I had, specifically the gay friends I had. He always had something to say about them regarding their sexuality. Not even that. There were times about how he would just randomly talk about how gay people are disgusting. And there was one time at this party where he got into a fight with one of my friends, who was, by the way, gay. And this is when I found out he was gay. I'm gonna come back for part 2. Part 2 on how I found out my homophobic boyfriend was gay. So, like I said, we were at a party, and he got into it with one of my friends. Now, the whole situation started is when my friend wanted to go get me a drink. And by the way, we all came to the party together, and my boyfriend didn't like that. He said that he would get it. My friend was like, no, it's cool, I got it. And then they just started bickering back and forth. Of course, my boyfriend was like, oh, you're not her man, you're a sissy, you're that, da-da-da-da-da. Just going off on him. And I was telling him to calm down, it's not that serious. And my friend left the area where we went to go get himself a drink, came back, and threw the drink on my boyfriend. And I was so confused because I thought he was trying to leave the situation alone. And my boyfriend got up and just immediately started going in on him. So they got into it, and my best friend was beat up real bad. When I got up and, tried to clean him off, my friend was like, oh, you need to go talk to your boyfriend about what happened last night. And I'm like, last night? Y'all come back for part 3 on how I found out my homophobic boyfriend was gay. So after their fight or whatever, my friend was messed up real bad. I picked him up, try to help him out. And of course, I was upset about the whole situation, but my boyfriend really blacked out on him, which I thought was unnecessary. Anyways, my friend was really frustrated, was really irritated, and literally out of nowhere, he was like, tell her about last night. And I'm like, what happened last night? He was like, oh, since he want to talk about me being gay, talk about what you do. And I'm looking at him like, what? In my head, I'm still not thinking he's gay. I'm thinking maybe he cheated on me with some girl. But regardless, I still would be upset. And my friend was like, I'm sorry to tell you, but he was with me last night. And I'm looking and I'm like chuckling a little bit wait, huh? He's saying after the little arguments that we've been having in our relationship that he would go to my friend's dorm room and they would be messing around. And my boyfriend, of course, the entire time, he's like, that's not true. He's lying. You gonna trust a sissy boy? Just Storytime on why I don't trust male doctors, specifically the ones that work with the female body. So the summer of 2020, a couple days before my sister's birthday trip to Miami, this might be TMI, but my vajayjay was tingling. It felt weird, but I ignored it. The next day, it was so painful that I couldn't even sit down. But I assumed that it was an ingrown hair because I would get them time to time. Anyways, later that night, I met up with my boyfriend to go to his house. As we were walking, he noticed that I was limping. I, of course, told him my whole situation about what was going on down there. He said, the pain is hurting to the point where you're limping. You should head to the hospital. So we went to the hospital immediately so I could find out what was going on. So we went to the hospital immediately so we could find out what was going on. And there were times of that night my boyfriend assumed that I had some type of STD, which wasn't the case. When the first doctor saw me and checked me out, they were so confused what was going on, so they brought in a different doctor. And I'll get into what exactly that doctor did to my body in part 2. Part 2 on why I do not trust male doctors, specifically the ones that work with the female body. So the second doctor came in and he told me to open up my legs. And this man immediately took 3 fingers and shoved it in. When I tell you that was the most painful experience I've ever had in my life, it was so painful. More painful than childbirth. He was twisting his fingers as though he was looking for something. He couldn't tell me exactly what it was, but he said that I should be fine. Maybe 5 minutes later, a nurse came in. She said the doctor said that I had lymph nodes, and they prescribed me with 3 different drugs. And they put a shot in my butt. If you have the option to get in your arm, get it in your arm. When I got done, I went back home, started taking the drugs. The drugs made me feel really sick. I was shaky, fatigued, getting heat flashes, nausea, and my heart was racing super fast. And still with the drugs, the pain was not going away. A few days later, I went back to the hospital because the drugs just weren't working. And when I got checked out, I was diagnosed with something completely different than what I was told, which I will be getting into in part 3. Part 3 on why I do not trust male doctors, specifically the ones that work with female bodies. So like I said, I went back to the ER and was diagnosed with something completely different. So all the prescriptions that the doctors had me taking were the wrong drugs. So the process of me being in the hospital, a different doctor had checked me out. When I told the other doctor what I had, or what I was told by their other doctor, he was like, lymph nodes? Who told you that? I said, one of your doctors, and he gasped. And he told me that I had a Bartholin cyst. He said he could drain it, but there's a risk of it coming back, and it did. And I told him, please drain it because it was very painful. The first step to draining it was numbing it, and he had to prick my vajayjay 10 times with the needle, which was also painful. Then he had to make a cut to drain it. At that point, I was about to pass out because I could literally feel everything. The numbing was not working. Plus, I was extremely embarrassed because there were like 5 other men with my legs busted open. And I cried the entire process. No one asked if I was okay. They rushed the whole process. Hey guys, I'm finally back with another story time. I've been on hiatus because I recently moved. Now that I'm settled, I'm posting story times every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. And if you're interested in sending an anonymous story time, definitely go check out my Instagram and DM me. Now let's get into the long-awaited story. This story time is how my psycho ex-best friend almost put my boyfriend in jail. We were friends for 6 years and things took a turn the last 2 years. Whenever she had problems, I listened to her, give her advice. But whenever I vented to her, I was ignored and the conversation was dry if we weren't speaking about her. After a while, I distanced myself and became friends with my now boyfriend. I started hanging out with him more and she started to get really jealous. She tried to get me to break up with him, saying he was ugly and broke. When I finally got to my breaking point of cutting her off, I went to her personally and tried to cut off our friendship. We were arguing, going back and forth. Towards the end of our conversation, she yelled and said, my boyfriend forced himself on her. Let me know if you guys want a part 2. Part 2 on how my psycho ex-best friend almost put my boyfriend in jail. So me and her was arguing and I was seriously trying to end our relationship because it was really toxic. Towards the end of our conversation, she yelled at me saying that my boyfriend forced himself onto her. I was so confused on how to react. Even though she was crazy, this was my best friend for 6 years and I met my boyfriend maybe a couple months ago. And she has never said anything like this to me before. And I started thinking, maybe the reason why she hated our relationship is because of what he did to her. So of course, I immediately ended our relationship, and also because she asked me if I could cut him off completely, and I did. A few days later, I asked her if she ever wanted to fill out a police report or tell her parents. She said she was embarrassed and wasn't ready to come out. 2 weeks later, my ex-boyfriend, pulled up at my house asking me why did I end the relationship. He came to me crying, and I told him what she told me. He claimed that he barely has even spoken to the girl. The entire situation was really nasty, and at this point, I really didn't know who to believe, so I confronted her about it, which I'll get into in part 3. Part 3 on how my psycho ex-best friend almost put my boyfriend in jail. So I went ahead and went to my best friend's house and told her what he told me. She said that he was lying and he was just trying to separate us. She even told me to call the cops if he ever popped up at my house like that ever again. And I'm like, yeah, she's right. He should never popped up like that. But he was blocked, so he really had no other way of communicating with me. Anyway, over time, I kept asking her if she ever wanted to go to her parents about it or take legal action. And she would always say that she wasn't ready and wasn't comfortable. And of course, I had to understand that because those type of situations are really traumatic. I don't know, maybe a year after the situation, her attitude hasn't really changed. She was still the same psycho, crazy, and manipulative friend. I don't know, I think over time, I just started to get tired of her, even after what happened to her. A couple months later, I still asked her again if she ever wanted to press charges. I think she got fed up with me asking, and she told me that the whole thing was a prank. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. She was like, yes, it was a prank, and the prank is over now, and it doesn't matter anymore. I blacked out. This story time is from a follower, and she really needs advice. By the way, we're going to call her Kalia. So Kalia's baby daddy had got her pregnant when she was 15, and now she's currently 16. She said they have a toxic cycle where they get very nasty with each other. That takes a toll on her on how she perceives her own body. There were times where she tried to talk to him about her feelings. She feels like this relationship has been really draining. There are times where the relationship was physically. She wants to remain anonymous, so please down below drop down some advice.
This is why parents should believe their kids. In 2010, a 15-year-old boy started to notice that the door to his attic, which was in his bedroom, was always open. One day, when his mom's giving him a hard time about being lazy, he's like, well, you're one to talk. You always leave my attic door open. She's like, I haven't touched your attic door in months, and nobody else has either. Not easily frightened, the boy decides to leave the attic door open. And so he's laying in bed, and he kind of looks over at the door, and standing in the door frame is a figure staring right at him. He bolts, tells his parents, they don't believe him, and then 6 months later, they move anyway. A few years later, the boy discovers his favorite teacher actually moved into his old house. And so he jokingly asks her, you ever see any ghosts walking around your attic? Her face got completely serious, and she's like, you know, as soon as we moved in, the door to the attic kept opening. So we investigated, and we found a trap door that led onto the roof. Someone had been crawling in through that entrance and living in the attic for years.
Can you solve this mystery? This is a story about a young girl whose brother confessed to killing their parents, but things are not as they seem. All the clues to what really happened are hidden in what I'm about to say. So one day, this young girl decided to tell her friend about the terrible tragedy. Her friend asked about what happened to her brother after the confession. She said he got arrested, went to trial, and eventually was found guilty and sentenced to death by lethal injection. During the execution, her brother never said a word. He gave no explanation and just stared at her blankly as they gave him the injection. The young girl admitted after that she couldn't eat or sleep. She had so many questions, but no one left to give her answers. She tried to block out the terrible memories and suffered from depression and even amnesia. The friend suggested she go to a psychic to find some answers, so she did. She asked, what drove my brother to lose his mind? And the psychic said, your brother was always perfectly sane. The girl asked, so then why did my brother kill our parents? And the psychic said, your brother was only responsible for the death of one person. Suddenly, the girl understood everything. She broke down crying. What really happened to this family? Can you solve this mystery?
This is why you should never eat chicken for dinner. One night, a young couple got invited to a party, so they called their neighbor to babysit their newborn son. But they could have never expected the horrifying things this would lead to. Their neighbor was an old woman, and the couple needed her to put their baby to bed and put a chicken in the oven so it would be cooked for tomorrow's dinner. The old woman agreed, and the couple left for the night. But soon the mother felt like she needed to call and check in. The old woman answered the phone, and the mother asked if she put the baby to bed yet. "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot all about it. I'll do it now," the old woman said. "And have you put the chicken in the oven?" the mother asked. "I'm sorry, I forgot about that too. I'll do it now," said the old woman. The mother just rolled her eyes and hung up. She thought she couldn't complain because her neighbor was helping her out anyways. It wasn't until the couple got home that they realized what a horrifying mistake they made. They thanked the old woman for helping out, and the mother went upstairs to check on her baby. When she walked into her son's bedroom, she was shocked to see an uncooked chicken in the crib. But what happened next was even more terrifying. Downstairs, she heard her husband say, "You won't believe this, honey. That forgetful neighbor burned our chicken dinner."